One of the most important things when we're looking at football and becoming an official is that we speak an entirely different language than most people would think. And getting that language knocked out is probably your biggest challenge as a new official. One of the main things about that is how we refer to the teams. We don't refer to the teams as, the visitors versus the other guys or whatever. We refer to the teams in two ways. The first team is the team with the ball. They are designated in the rule book, and basically everywhere else, they are designated as Team A. The team on defense is referred to as Team B. And the players, when they're referred to in the rule book by this nomenclature. So let's say this player, his number was 1. He'd be referred to in the rule book as player A1. Let's say this player was named 72, or was named 72. It was number 72. He'd be referred to in the rule book as A72. Likewise, this guy was on defense. Let's say his number was 21. He'd be referred to as B21. So when you're reading through the case book, you can tell that's what it is. And now for kicking plays, it's similar, except instead of A, you have the kicking team, which would be K, and you have the receiving team, which would be R. So you'd also have K and R. In our discussions about the language of football, definitions are really important, and we want to talk about right now about the definitions say about players, who they are, what they can do, what they can't do, who are they, all those types of things. So the first thing I want to talk about is a player. Now, if you were to ask someone in the stands what a player was, they would say anyone who's wearing the uniform, basically, that type of thing. But in terms of us as officials, player is restricted to these 22 guys on the field. They are what referred to as players. Now, there are other designations of what they do, but when we start off, when we refer to a player, we're only referring to the 22 persons on the field who are participating in the play. So now let's look at the further different types of players. So let's start off with some of the more generalized ones, but the most important ones, especially for wing officials, are going to be these guys right here, and this guy right here. We refer to these guys as linesmen, and also this man right here as the snapper. Now the snapper is a person who is generally known as the center, but we call him as a snapper because technically he is not always the center of the line. So now that we've talked about the snapper, what's also very important, a very important thing about that snapper is the center of his body. Okay, so now when we talk about that snapper, one of the most important things is his waistline right there. So, because that leads us to another example of a player designation, which is a lineman, which is extremely important because for a legal formation for the offense, they need to have 7 men on the line of scrimmage. We need to have 7 players either as a lineman or like this, snapping the ball as a snapper, or breaking the waist of the snapper. So if we look here and we said we took this line and extended it out that way, that guy's breaking the line and these guys are all breaking the line. So we have how many people on the line? We have the snapper right here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 with the snapper. So that's why it's very important for us to know where the snapper's waist is so we can tell who's on or who isn't off the line of scrimmage, because these players are considered to be on the line of scrimmage. Another issue to make them a lineman is they have to be facing the direction of their goal. So if this player right here, let's take this player right here, and let's rotate him. So that he's facing in this direction. He is no longer considered on the line because he isn't facing his own goal line. Let's move him back so he's in a proper position now. Along with that, any player who isn't on the line of scrimmage in that manner, let's say this person receives a snap, this back right here, this guy, and then we also have a wide receiver down here who's off the line of scrimmage. Let's actually go and look at him. So if we look at this guy, we can see he's not breaking that line through the snapper's waist, so he's considered off the line of scrimmage. So anyone who is not on the line of scrimmage, like we just discussed, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy, is considered a back. And now as we talked about, you can only have 11 men on the field for a play. You realize that if you have 7 men on the line of scrimmage, you can only have 4 backs on any play. As another part of football, we have all of these people right here. In terms of the rules, we consider everyone on that sideline a non-player. Basically, you consider a non-player as anyone who isn't part of those 22 people we discussed earlier. So they are all considered non-players. Now let's look at an instance where we have a player coming on the field to replace another player. So when this is a currently this player over here is a non-player. But let's move him onto the field. We want to move him. Say move him right here onto the field, and he talks to this guy right here. And then so he is considered a substitute until he talks to this player and gets this player to leave the field. So we have a couple things that have happened there. So let's look at that situation again. We had this player come on and become a player, and this player who was a player left the field and now has become a non-player. So we had 2 things happen. We had the player who was coming onto the field, this guy, when he came onto the field, he was at first in this time period he was considered a substitute. And why we need him to be considered a substitute and why it's important that we do consider him a substitute is when he's right here, in this area right here, technically he's downfield of the football. So he would be in a illegal position if he was here as a player before the snap. So that's why he needs to be considered a substitute. And likewise for this player, when he left, he is now a replaced player. So he runs through this area again, through the neutral zone and everything. So it's not a false start or encroachment or anything like that. He's just leaving the field as a replaced player. So that's why it's important that we refer to these individuals not as players when they're running off the field, but as substitutes. And now there are a lot of different rules for substitutes in terms of illegal substitution, what makes it a legal substitution. We'll get into those later. But just for right now, we want to kind of realize the difference between a substitute and a player and a replaced player. There are 2 more player designations that are fairly plain for us to see, but we need to go over them anyway. That's a passer and a runner. So they're just what you think they are. A runner is someone who runs the ball, as you can see in this play right here. Once number 13 gets the ball, hands it off to 34, he's a runner, and there you go. That's a basic runner play right there. And the other player designation we have has a little bit more trickiness to it in terms of what can be done or can't be done to that player. But for now, it's just a passer, which you'll see number 13 will take a shotgun snap and become a passer. The big idea with the passer is that, especially this is a new rule change, is that he continues to be a passer until after he throws the pass and goes to join the play again. So those are some items we look at with a passer. What we have here is a good example of how the field will look before a play. So we've got our 5-man crew. We've got referee right here. Let's put an R there. We've got, let's call this guy over here the head linesman. We've got the line judge, the umpire, and the back judge. Okay. So we're looking at our basic lineup. So right here we've got a line of scrimmage. We've got the offense in blue, the defense in yellow. And so we come out here, we're looking at our lineup positions. The referee and the umpire should be lined up almost directly across from one another. Let me just remove that line out. But they should be lined up across from each other like that. And you're going to have the linesman and the head lines judge the head linesman are going to be straddling the line of scrimmage. In this case, let's say the ball is on the 20. And your back judge is going to be further back. He's going to mostly stay in between the hash marks, and he's about 18 to 20 yards, 22 yards off the line of scrimmage, but he's also going to be determined by where he lines up is by this guy right here. So if the last defender, let's say this guy was back here, the back judge is always going to be behind the furthest back defender. And so that's some of our basic lineup positions. Some of the big things that we have to really focus on when we're learning how to officiate football is what we're trying to do with officiating football is we really are a team on the field. And as a team, we're doing a whole bunch of things together. And one of those things is what we call it boxing in the play, but really in five-man mechanics, we're really triangulating in the play. So what we do here on this play is when we're talking about that, we talk about, let's escape out of this. And let's say this player ended up getting the ball. We take him and we're going to move him in this direction right here. He's up on the foot and he's in this way. Okay. So while he is moving in the backfield, let's say he's gotten the ball. We're trying to make a triangle around him between the umpire, the referee, and the wing official on that side while he's behind the line of scrimmage to make sure we get everything that's going on in this triangle. So we're going to try and fill in everything in here to make sure we're covering him. Now what happens is, so let's say that the player would then move downfield. The wing official is going to move downfield with him, and so that he's kind of reading him. But also in that, what we have now is instead of the umpire, referee, and wing official triangulating him in, we're going to have the umpire, wing official, and back judge moving to triangulate him in to make sure we're covering all the damage around him, and then the referee and the line judge are going to be cleaning up around the outside of it. But we always want to try and make sure that we've got a good triangulation around the ball carrier to make sure we have proper coverage on the play.